We've got a couple of topics that I thought might be of interest. Everybody can hear me okay, yes? Okay. All right, excellent. Thank you. All right, super. So I thought we'd talk into, we have a list of maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 things that we could cover. But hopefully, again, we'll have plenty of dialogue and questions and things that we can talk about. But I thought we'd start and just talk about, some unusual things that have come up over the past couple of weeks, because I think those always are helpful, real world things that come up. So we had a question this past week. We're working with some of our folks in India, actually, and they had a potential customer that they were working with that wanted to import placeholders. And many of you have probably done placeholder import before, but they wanted to import placeholders and set custom field values for them when they did that. And some of our folks said you can't do that. Well, that's true. You can't do that in the native admin, but you can actually do that in the web admin. So I thought I'd go ahead and show that real quick because there were some of our folks that weren't aware of that. So give me 1 second here to share my screen. I'll remember to do that this time. All right, and I want to share this one. Okay, so if we take a look here, let me get some of the other stuff out of the way. All right, so if we take a look at the web console, and again, I don't think many people are using it for day-to-day, for doing everything, but there's some things that it does really well, and there's some new features in here. And I will just update, just as a general philosophy, what we're attempting to do with this web admin is to provide the simplest set of functionality here to manage devices to make it easy for you to manage a device while you're mobile. But we're still supporting and managing the native admin, and we're working on trying to make sure that we have feature parity. But the particular thing that we're looking at here is importing placeholders. So in the devices view, you'll notice there's this upload option. Right? So there's an option here to do an import file. Now, you notice with native, there's an option that says, hey, download the template. There isn't a specific template here. You can kind of build your own. It's actually a beautiful little system. I really like the way that this has been built. But let me show you an example file. So here in this guy, if we open this with TextEdit and just take a look real quick, this is just a sample record. We'll add some additionals to it, but I have put in it a FileWave client name that I want to use. In this case, we wanted to specify a warranty date. That was one of the things that wanted to be imported. When is the warranty expiring? And I think Josh might do an example a little later that also has to do with the date. We wanted to import asset tag. That's another custom field that we have. And then when we're importing in this way, we have to specify the platform for the particular device. Is it Windows or Mac OS? So we're going to cheat here a little bit. I've got one record in here. We'll just make some more real quick so we can see some more things. So we'll put a bunch of these in here, right? And of course, those would be conflicts on that device name. So we're going to change that, right? So we'll just do 2, 3, 4. We'll skip 10. Right. Seems important. And we'll put 15 in there. Okay, so we've got some records, right, with general data in them. So to import now, we can go in and choose to upload that CSV. That's here on my documents folder. And you can see it's kind of already mapped them for me. Based on the names. Now, I used the specific names, but what's neat about this is that when you browse in here, if we had not matched them, you get this dialog, right? So any CSV will work because you actually just pick in the GUI here what you want to match on. So in this case, we're going to say that the client name, right, is going to match to the device name, and that little key symbol in there shows you that that is the key record, right? So we're going to match on the import based on device name. We're going to do a warranty end date, right, which is going to match up to our custom field for warranty end. Asset tag is going to match to our asset tag field. And platform in this case is going to match to somewhere in here. OS type, right, is Windows, right? So we just map those fields. And then we've got actions, so we can take these devices and we can even import them and move them to a particular group. So let's do that. I'm going to put them in, we'll just do this test distro manual group here. So we'll apply that change. So that can bring them in, and we can actually do more than one thing. We can even set other custom fields and create copies in groups too, right? So clones we can create. But in this case, we'll just do the one thing. And then at the end, we say, okay, what do we want to do? Do we want to update existing placeholders or devices, right? Or do we just want them to be imported? In this case, we're not looking to update them, but this is a method that you could update custom fields en masse too. We're not going to update existing placeholders or devices, though. We're just going to import them. But you can see that I already have computer in here. See how it says it's skipped? Because it actually matches. If we did an update and said we would update placeholders and devices, I believe that one will now actually update because we're saying to update that. So let's import that. And it shows that 14 records were created and 1 record was updated. And if we go look in that group, which was this guy, we can see those devices all show in here. That doesn't exactly look the way I'd want that to look, but we can see all of those devices are in here. And if I pick any one of them and choose to edit the device fields and change those values, we'll see that, say, warranty end date, for instance, or asset tag, you can see that it's filled in with the data that we imported. So you can do both things. We can do placeholders and bring them in, create the placeholders with custom fields in one fell swoop. All right, so while I was talking nonstop there, were there any questions or comments on that? Did folks already know you could do that?
Not on that, not questions on that in the chat.
Okay.
Other things.
Okay, good, good. So let's hop into other things then. What do we have?
So going back, I have questions about license not found errors and why I have to delete and create file sets to get apps to load on iOS devices.
I can explain that a little more if it would help. Hi, thanks. So I'm a FileWave user. I'm not an admin, and I manage special education iPads. And we've had a number of difficulties recently, but the one that's showing up now is when I attempt to load an app, what I see is it shows the app is loading in FileWave, and this is to an iPad. But when I check the device information screen, it shows me an error in red, license not found. And and also the app doesn't load on the device. If I delete the file set for that app, do a refresh, create a new one, it will load, but then a week or two after that, the same thing happens. And I can't keep recreating file sets because it deletes apps from existing devices.
Well, that sounds like a good, I don't know if you have a trouble ticket open on that, but I don't think that behavior is what we want to see. But let's talk a little bit about the workflow, because I think it's really helpful just to understand all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes when you create a file set, when you create, when you choose to deploy it to a device. It might be helpful for you when you're looking to see what's going on with it. It might be helpful for others to cover it too. So let's go through that. But I would definitely open a ticket on that if you have not. Because we could work on
I have. They've been working on it, for a couple of months, but please continue.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about just some of the workflow for that. So let me go, where do I have my devices, my app? So I've got a bunch of file sets here that are coming in, that are iOS apps coming in through VPP, right? And so most of you know, you go into, say, School Manager, or you go into Business Manager, and you buy your app, and VPP syncs behind the scenes with FileWave. Happens all the time, actually. If you go into Preferences and take a look on the VPP tab here, you'll see that it shows the synchronization in the last time it synchronized. So for me, at 10:40, so it was 1 minute ago, roughly this happens about every 5 minutes in the background. And what it picks up during that time are all the licenses that you own, right? So if you buy a new application, we're going to pick that up. If you buy more licenses for a particular application, we're going to pick that up too. Those are all shown for reference here in the license view. And this is a really helpful view. Now in my little baby environment, I don't have that many in here, and you can see I don't have many where I've got licenses installed. But say here I've got this App Store book for Art of War, and then I've got this game here, Retro Bowl, that's assigned. I can see that I own 10 licenses for that, and this would be per VPP token, and you have to have rights to those individual tokens to see them. So if I didn't have management rights here for TK Local, I wouldn't be able to see this record. But I can see that in this state I'm green, and I'm green because I own more than I have installed. If this were yellow, right, it means that I'm exactly at the number. And there is a red state, but you'll never see the red state with VPP because you just can't really go over. Or at least in a normal workflow, you can't go over. So yellow is a warning sign. So we can always sort in here by the number installed, or just quickly eyeball based on the color of the icon, whether we have licenses or not. Okay, so that's how the licenses come in. And the file sets get created depending on how you have it configured in your VPP token, whether they automatically create or not. You may not have them automatically creating. Just a little pointer here. If you do set it up for automatic creation, you can control where those file sets are created. They don't have to be done in the root folder there. Let me just show you that real quick. So if we look at the settings on the individual VPP token, we'll see here that there's an option to auto create, and then you say when they're created, where do you want them to go, right? I don't have it set, but I could choose where I want them to go. And so I might put them in that folder that I'm in right now, an OS for iOS. Right? So I can set that and then save that change. And that means that whenever I buy something new, it will automatically create that file set and create it in that location. Right? Hopefully that makes sense so far.
I'm with you so far. Yeah,
we haven't gotten to the point where we're. Yep. Yeah. Now we've got the file set, right? But how do we actually get it to the device, right? So that's of course where we're doing an association, and that association might be a kiosk association for somebody to install it on their own, or it might be a push where we're pushing it out to the device. And this is where things get interesting because there's a triangle here. I always refer to it as the triangle. So when we create an association, so if I take this biology app here, and I go ahead and create an association for that, and I create it to my all iOS group, that association is going to show, and of course it's not effective until I go ahead and update the model. So I'll update the model. And what that's going to do is two things. That is going to, behind the scenes, reach out immediately to Apple and tell Apple, oh, we're assigning licenses for this particular app to any of the serial numbers of the devices that are in this group. And that doesn't matter whether it's a kiosk association or it is a push model where we're pushing the app. The licenses are allocated immediately, even if it's a kiosk application, right? That's one thing to keep in mind. And the reason that's done is for performance reasons, to make sure that when somebody installs it from the device, that there's not a delay while it goes and tries to fetch the license. But that license is critical. It must exist on the device, has to know about that license before the app can install. So with those licenses allocated, and if I go back to license management, I don't remember now, it was a biology app here, right? Let me search for that real quick. Right, and I'm going to see when on the next sync that this shows the number of owned, and the licenses will show as it installs will reflect here. But from the device side, now this device is actually turned off right now. I don't think it's on anywhere. What I expect to see is what's going to happen after that license is allocated is when I come in here and I look at command history, I'm going to expect to see a new command in here called install application. And I may see others. It may not just be the new one that I did. And partially that's because VPP applications, sorry, was there a question? Okay. VPP apps are constantly updating, right? If we go back to our license management view here for a second, all of the apps that I have in here, any number of these might update in the App Store today. And every time VPP syncs, we pick up those changes. And with a change in version, if there's a newer version of the application, that's also going to create new push notifications for those install application commands. And every one of these communications, when we look at this, this is all based off of a push notification going to the device. And that's the triangle. FileWave sends the push notification to Apple to say, hey, we need the device. So we talk to Apple, Apple talks to the device, and then the device talks to us. So it's kind of a triangle, and it's always instantiated that way. So right now, all of these commands for this device are sitting here and not sent because the device isn't on. So it can't be sent to it. The push notification can't go. But if it were there, I would see an install application command similar to this one, but this one's just gathering the list. And over on the right, it would show me what that app is it's trying to push. And so in your case, where you've got a problem with the app pushing, this is where I would want to come and look. Does the install application command get created? What's the response from it? Right? Because once we're kind of throwing it over the fence when it comes to this list, we're giving this list of commands to Apple, but then it's between the device and Apple to complete it, right? The device, and I typically joke with this, but it's kind of like when I ask my son, who's 18 now, to take out the garbage, right? And he tells me yes. He's acknowledged me, but that's as good as the MDM framework goes. And it's the same with iPads. We can ask the device to install the application, and that's what install application is. But then the device has to do that with Apple, and we don't have any control over that. Hopefully it works. Most times it works. And we'll see the result here in installed apps, hopefully, that those will show, right? So you can see some of the apps that have been pushed to this device already. Right? But we don't have control over it once that starts. So in the troubleshooting, I'm sure if this has been going on for a while, it's probably a fairly deep issue. But I thought it might be at least helpful to look at that from a ways you can troubleshoot it perspective.
Is there something that would prevent, so, you know, I understand how, and I appreciate you going through it, but basically your management system has a pointer to the app on the App Store. That's what the file set's doing, is saying, go to the App Store and grab this. Is it possible that the reason why it won't work until I delete and create a new file set is because for some reason, maybe they updated the app and the file set is still attached to the original version when it was created?
No, we really only pull metadata for these. So when you look at these file sets, the only thing that really happens with these is this metadata gets pulled from the App Store. So what we'll see, rarely does, most of this doesn't change, but we will see things where the bundle size will change, and the version in particular is the thing that we key off of as far as, okay, we have already installed 3.2, but maybe 3.3 comes out today. That VPP sync that happens every few minutes in the background would refresh this metadata, right?
I've even tried manually triggering the VPP sync to see if that was the issue, and I do understand, but it continues to happen.
Okay, if I can chime in, maybe some background thing here. When we assign a license, or we ask Apple to create a license for your device, there are two things. One is device assignment and user assignment. User assignment is even slower because it needs to go through the different layers of privacy protection Apple is putting in place. So we don't have access to the iTunes account. We have access to the VPP user, which has access to the iTunes account, and so on. And it takes a little bit of time. And this is why we have this 3 minutes delay. So we assign the license, and every minute we check, do we have a license? Yes. How long have we been, have we got a license? More than 3 minutes? Okay, then we will ask the device to install the application. And sometimes it's not enough. And it's definitely something which is not in our hands. Another thing is that we used to have in the past, when we ask Apple to associate a license, we would not rely on the direct answer, but we would check if the license would be installed. So we install the license, and the next step was, okay, give me the list of licenses you have. And if we have the right license, we know that the license is here. This is what we were doing, if I remember correctly, in FileWave 13. But that doubles the load on Apple VPP, because we have one call for Apple, please assign the license, and one other call, which is, hey, tell me if the license is there. And Apple recommendation was, hey, sorry, that's too much load. If all vendors, all VPP vendors, NDM vendors are doing the same, we have millions and millions of requests per second. We cannot do that. So what you have to do is just rely on the fact that if there is no error when you associate the license, it should be there. It should. And sometimes it's not the case. And what's happening when you remove the file set and you recreate the file sets, we remove all licenses from our database and we recreate them. We ask Apple again about these licenses. And if they are not there, we ask Apple again, hey, please create the licenses. So what may happen in your case is that the license creation failed somehow, but because we rely on the initial acknowledgement, we don't know that it did not happen. And then it's broken. How can we solve that? Today, it's a little bit hard. We have to understand exactly what's going on, but I have kind of good news for you. You know that last week we had WWDC, so the developer conference from Apple, and one of the small items they announced between the whole week is they are providing a new API for VPP, which is supposed to be way more reliable, so we hope so, more scalable, and based on notifications. So that means that if that works well, we are starting investigation, seeing how we can do that in FileWave. But the idea would be that we will be able to send more requests at once, because today we can send one request for 10 devices for one app every second. We can combine some of them, but that's it. So if you have 10,000 devices and you want to deploy 20 apps, I let you imagine the time it takes for us to get all licenses. And the second thing is that we will get notifications. So we will send a request to Apple, please tell me, please assign these licenses to that devices. And we will be notified when it's done. And if it's done, then we will be able to install the license, the application at that time. So that should mitigate the problem where we ask Apple to install a license and for some reason it didn't work and we are not aware of it. So hopefully,
I'm gonna stop so others can ask questions too. Josh indicated, thanks Josh, that you follow up with me.
Yeah, I have your email address.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks. That was a good question though, and it gave us a chance to cover some of the kind of the fundamental pieces there, which I think.
And we've seen this question coming quite recently on support cases, so you're not the only one, which indicates usually, I mean, it's the summer season where lots of schools, organizations are removing licenses from devices, are adding licenses again from devices. The VPP service is under load. And usually something like October, everything starts to be okay again. And something end of May, we start seeing troubles again. So we should, in the world, shift the refresh seasons. That would help the IT world.
Okay.
All right, did anything else queue up for us, Josh, while we're recovering that one?
Yeah, there's things. Sorry if I do this out of order, folks. There was, I guess, is there a way to prevent apps from being updated if you don't want them to change during the semester? And John, who asked that, was that about Windows and Mac or iOS? Because I guess we could do it with a blocker script, right, if we didn't want changes to a machine. But I'm thinking that's an iOS question. iOS, yep.
Yeah, it's not as easy as you might want it to be. We do have some feature requests out there to better control the update mechanism for VPP, because you might not want to update an app. It might change behavior in the app. There's some of those things, and you might want to control the timing of the installation of those things. So it's not done yet, but they're out there on the horizon for us. does give me an opportunity to kind of segue into something that's coming in 14.5. And 14.5 is in early adopters' hands right now. It may release next week, but it's probably going to release the week after. But 14.5 has our first baby steps into something like this. I'm going to switch back to the web admin here for just a second to show this capability. So, right now, it's only available in software updates and only available within the web admin, but the intention is to expand this capability to bring it to native as well, and to hopefully bring VPP into it too, so that you can do that. There's a couple things you can do with a configuration file now, but it's not particularly user-friendly. Let me show you this real quick though. If we go and take a look in software updates in the web admin, this is a slightly updated view, and there's a number of things that I'd like to see change. There's all sorts of things we're going to work on here with software updates, but the thing I wanted to show you in particular is this new concept of a rollout plan. It's a new control to be able to control when certain things install. So right now, it's hard-coded with these three options of during the weekend, on non-business hours through the day, or non-business hours and weekend. Eventually, you'll be able to define what your own time windows are. But the purpose of this is that we can then say, okay, I want this to install Big Sur, for instance. This update is going to be big, right? It's 12 gig almost. I don't want, you ever notice these get bigger every single time? I don't want to push this out to the devices in my environment during the school day or during the business day. I'd rather push it in the evening hours. So I can pick that particular rollout plan for this and then deploy this update. And it's only going to install on the devices during that window of time. It will not install during the daytime. And the intention is to go ahead and expand that capability to VPP and to all regular file sets / payloads. So not today is kind of the answer, but hopefully soon.
Man, I'm just trying to see if I'm missing.
Okay, I'll jump into something else while you go through the list. A couple other things I want to show you. One thing in native, you may have seen these when we did our last event, but so I apologize if it's a repeat, but really good things. And
Tony's audio cut out for a sec. He'll be back.
Can you hear me now?
Now you're back.
Okay, so I have a device that's MDM enrolled here, Windows MDM enroll, and I wanted to point this out, right? So this client monitor is like client monitor in the native tool, except it doesn't have some of the extra things, but this is talking to my device. But what's very interesting about this device is not on the same network as my FileWave server or my admin. So this is a NATed device, but it can still talk. So this, and eventually, again, this will come into the native admin as well. But client monitor can now talk to this device through a NAT, especially in a situation where you might have devices that are remote from your network. This is a super addition, and why this is so excellent is because we've also leveraged that same technology here to allow us to do things like send a verify to this device, even though we can't talk to it directly. So a verify, and you see it's doing the verify, right? That device, it happens, I have it in my remote desktop here. That's this device here. We'll get back to that in a second. But I can't actually talk to that IP, right? The IP address that it's giving me is this 50 dot address, which is my externally NATed IP, but I am actually talking to it. So that is super helpful from a troubleshooting, or I want to just make that remote device do a verify real quick. That is just a great addition. And again, we'll work on getting that into the native admin too, but a really nice addition there. While we're in here, I will also show something else for those of you, especially at this time of year when you might be doing stuff like doing erase and wipes of iOS devices. If we take a look here at a couple of devices, you'll notice there's an option here with the device that we can send a wipe command, right? But, and this we're pretty happy with, we can also select multiple devices and send a wipe to them. Right, so I know that's been a long-standing feature request that we can do that on multiple devices at one time, and you can now do that in the web admin as well. So any questions on either of those things? Hopefully there's some thumbs up out there on them. I think they're both really great additions for the daily, you know, the daily grind. They're both really nice little features.
Yeah, thinking about, actually, is there a limit to how many devices you can send the wipe command to? And how long does the wipe command stay in the queue for the device?
Well, the wipe command will be an MDM command, right? So that's going to show in the, this is the same view that we were looking at in native before. So that's going to be here, right? So in this case, this erase device command that I sent on the 18th of May, this device hasn't been on for a while. It's still sitting there waiting to go. Right, so it's gonna send that device. As far as a practical limit, it's not as much. I think a technical limit is a careful limit on the operational side. Right, would be I wouldn't go too big with it. I would do, you know, a handful until you become comfortable. Right, same as all things with deployments as well. Start with a few, get a little bigger, then a little bigger before you do the really big bunch. Activation locks, it does attempt to deal with activation locks. It will warn you if it can't remove an activation lock and then ask you what you want to do. Do you want to go ahead and send the erase command, or do you want to just skip it?
That's a point I wanted to mention, is that if you wipe a lot of devices, the main pain point would be that if there is anything wrong with activation lock, you will get a long list of things which are not working and that activation lock could not be removed. So if you have only a smaller number of devices, or if you are, yeah, you can deal with that, or you need to make sure that activation lock is properly handled. And
do you guys recall if wiping multiple devices in the web admin, you can do that in 14.2.2?
No, you cannot. This is new in 14.5.
Okay.
We have to add new things that weren't in the previous version. How else would we get you to upgrade?
Let's see. Somebody was asking if we were talking about client info wipe device or client info tools remote wipe. I guess the equivalent, or what path did you take to get there? Was it the wipe device from client info or client info tools remote wipe?
For now, it's only available in web admin, so which means that it's not the client info, it's from directly from here. As Tony mentioned, we want to have feature parity between web and native admin. So this is something that will be coming in native admin as well. So today you can go in client info and do wipe, and it's exactly the same as right click and remote wipe. So the idea would be that, yeah, you can mass select items and do wipe device. We just need for native admin to see how to behave properly when you have different type of devices, and if something goes wrong, mainly for activation lock, how do we present that in a good and nice way? So this is coming.
And can you cancel the wipe command once you sent it, or is it kind of on its way and can't be removed from the queue?
For now, for everything which is MDM, it's it's fire and forget. We may want to be able to remove the item from the command queue, but it's more complicated. For desktop, we still have desktop non-MDM. So if you're managing Windows devices or Mac without MDM, which is probably not too many these days, we still have the very legacy system, which is one by one. We haven't worked on that because we hope that MDM would cover this quicker than it used to be. But yeah, it's one by one and you hit middle update. Yeah.
And I know we said that if there's an activation lock, you'll get a warning when you do the wipe in the web admin about activation lock being there. Can you bail out? Can you cancel when you get that warning and decide, I don't want to move forward with one or more of these because they're activation locked?
Yeah,
Yes.
you have the choice. You can decide if you go forward and then you rely on the fact that you still know the Apple ID
Yeah.
and password, or you can just cancel and not clear it.
And I think that was all the questions related
Okay.
to that. You know,
Well,
as
why?
you're showing the web admin, I don't know if I'm thinking about the reporting on file set, you know, status.
Mm-hmm.
The thing we were talking about, it was kind of neat and wasn't available anywhere
Yeah, there's
prior, right?
two things I'm going to show then while we're waiting on other questions and things. One is the Windows MDM functionality. I thought I'd just show that real quick since I talked about this device that was Windows MDM, right? So this device is Windows MDM enrolled. And I think I can see, I know, well, I can see it easily on in the native admin. If I look at this device, you'll see here in client info that it shows me that the enrollment is via Azure AD, right? But I thought I'd show you what some of the content is for those. So if we go to this device, and there we go. You guys can still see me okay, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So if I go into settings on this device and take a look in the accounts and look at access worker school, and this is how you manually enroll a device. Yeah, no, thank you. That's annoying. Go away. Okay. If I look at this, I can look at info and it'll show me that this device is managed. But right now it's not got any rules to it. The only thing it's doing is it's pushing an application. That's the FileWave client. And this is very much like the hybrid model that we take with macOS devices. So when a Windows MDM device enrolls, it MDM enrolls first. And then part of the MDM commands then that follow is that it actually installs the FileWave client. So you'll see that where you have to upload an MSI for Windows client, very much like you've always had to do for PKGs for DEP enrollment for macOS. So it's very similar. But you can see there weren't any other rules applied to this device. And if we go in, I'm just going to do an example with Bluetooth real quick. If we go into our settings and take a look at Bluetooth, we can see on this device that Bluetooth is on, and I can do all sorts of stuff with Bluetooth, right? So all looks good. Well, let's go take a look now at actually restricting that. So if we go into payloads here, I'm going to create, we'll see some new buttons in here. We can also create new payloads for MSIs and PKGs. And if we have time later, we might take a look at that. But we can create a new Windows-based profile. And we're going to call this block Bluetooth. Right? And then we're going to pick the basically the profile that goes along with it. You can only pick one payload. In this case, we're going to set a Bluetooth policy. So as soon as we configure this, you'll see that the other things gray out because it has to be one per. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to disable everything with Bluetooth. We're just going to turn it all off. And we're going to save that. So now we've got a profile, but of course it's not associated to anything. In the web, it's referred to as deployment. I quite like that name, a little better than associations. But we're going to go ahead and create a new deployment, and we're going to call this our Bluetooth test or something like that. So they actually have names here. We're going to select the device, which in this case is just going to be my test device, this guy. So that gives us the device. On the payload front, of course, we want to use our blocker here. So we're going to add payload and then look for that block, which is blocking Bluetooth. So that's our devices here with our targets, and our payload in this case is this profile. Our options, well, it's a direct installation. We're not going to put this in the kiosk. And then summary-wise, just shows us one device with one app that's going to be pushed, and we're going to save it. And of course, none of that means anything until we update the model. So we'll go ahead and update the model. And this is where that verify is so helpful, because now, hold on, what do I have open? I have something open. Yep, my fault. I'm going to go ahead and update the model. And then what's so super helpful here, especially with that remote NATing, is I can go to this device and I can tell it immediately to verify, and then we'll see it. We should see it here. Pick up that file set. Of course, it's going to make a liar of me. There we go, sending download request. All right, and when we look back on the device side, what we should see is if we go into settings and go back into the access worker school and take a look at that. We can now see that it's got policies for Bluetooth and connectivity. So if we go and take a look at Bluetooth, we can see it now tells us that those settings are hidden or managed by the organization, and I can't now turn Bluetooth on. Right, so pretty nifty. And of course, removing that is just to remove that deployment. So if I go back to deployments, in fact, I don't even need to remove the deployment. I can leave it, but I can take this target away, right? So if we edit this guy, I can go into targets and actually just take that device out and save that, right? So the deployment still exists for Bluetooth, but there are no endpoints assigned to it. So when I update this model, from the device's point of view, that looks like a removal, and of course it is. So we'll do that verify again, and then what we'll see is the removal of that restriction. Right? And then from the device side, we'll have the removal of that policy. Hopefully by the time it's done, by the time we get there. And we can see it's gone. All right, so I think that's pretty cool. Any questions on that before I show the other example that Josh was talking about? So let's hop back. We'll do this one in the native side. All right, so one of the things that we've had for forever is the ability to look at deployments of file sets, right? So if I look, let's pick a particular one. Do I have a Firefox that I've deployed? I usually do have. Right. Let's see if I've got one that I've actually deployed. If we went to any particular file set in here and then picked report, we could see status. So in this case, there's only one device that has picked this one up. It's not super helpful because it worked, right? But what has been missing for a long time and has been asked for a long time is this field was never available in inventory. You had to come and look at an individual file set and look at the file set report to see what things worked. With 14.5, and again, probably not next week, but probably releasing the week after, the file set status is now available in inventory. So if we do a new inventory query, you'll see there's an entirely new section here, and this is available in the web too, of this file set deployment status. And it shows you status, the last status, what the status is, and the date for that. So if we drag this whole section in the fields section, we can see that we've got a bunch of things. So let's find the one. We've got one that's an error, right? But what is it? Well, we're not sure. So from the file set side, we're going to take the name of the file set and drag that in there too. So we can see that that error is related to this software update, right? So we can, I don't know if we can copy it from there, but let's say that we want to go to criteria. Let's say we just wanted to see errors, right? So if we wanted to see nothing but file set deployment errors, right? On the criteria side, we could go and take that last status and say that it is error. We typed it right. Installation status is, I do that a lot, error. Yeah, that's not right.
Oh, because it was installation status, not last status, right?
Oh,
If you go
yep,
back to field.
yep, I got the wrong field. oops, installation status is error, right? And that will then show us that singular error that we have. Now, what's super helpful about that is that means that in any one place, I can create now a report that shows me individual failures for file sets, but it doesn't have to be per file set. I can look at this across the board. So I could do something really creative, and I think Josh might cover something like this later. We could tweak this, and let's edit this query again, and we can say file set deployment errors today, right? And then we can add additional criteria and say that that file set deployment status, where the status date is within the past 1 day, right? And report wise, then I'm not going to have anything in this report because this is more of like a live time reporting where I don't actually care about maybe errors before that. Maybe I only care about errors from the past day. So it can even do really creative things like that. And then we could use that, if we wanted to feed the new Grafana dashboard, to actually build a dashboard of this to show the top 10 errors or things like that with the aggregate functions. But that's probably a little bit too much of a demo for that today, because it'd take us a little while to set up. All right, anything else out there?
So maybe not, because there's a lot getting handled in chat. Maybe should I take what you just did and talk about the date-based reporting and schedule reports?
Yeah, let me mention two things before we get there. One, just real quickly, I'm going to show you, again, if you missed the earlier event, that this creation of a payload, this is a big deal, actually. This is the first iteration of creating proper desktop-based file sets or payloads within the web admin. I just want to show this one real quick because of one particular thing that it does that the native admin doesn't right now, which is error correct on uploads, or at least watch for network issues. So let's say I wanted to create a FileWave admin file set. I can choose now to add files and look at this in my downloads and pick, say, my FileWave admin PKG, right? And it will then start uploading. Now, what's very interesting about this are two things that are super helpful. One, it will account for a network hiccup. I think it waits 25 seconds if there's an interruption before the thing will stop, and it will resume. You can see my upload speed's a little slow. But what's also really cool is I can move around. I don't have to sit there and wait for that payload. That payload is uploading regardless of the fact that I'm moving around in here. So it's not like native is, where it uploads only one thing at a time. So that is happening here in the background while I am doing this additional work. And in the meantime, I could even go ahead and create another one, right, while that's happening. So that's a really nice addition. And hopefully we'll see some of those things again come back into native too, so we can start tweaking those behaviors. Last thing I'm going to mention on this front before Josh takes over and shows a different example, we kind of mentioned at our last event that we were working on a new replacement for Observe Client. That deal has now been signed with a third party, and we're going to be integrating with TeamViewer to allow or replace our current Observe Client behavior. That will give us coverage on Mac devices, on Windows devices, on Chrome devices, on Android devices, and on iOS devices. So there'll be a lot of detail on that in future. We're trying to target an initial release of that for the fall release. That will be sometime around the end of September, early October, in line with Apple's announcements. We don't know exactly which of those pieces are going to be in that release, and there's a number of things to come out as far as the functionality and how it's all going to work administratively and such. But hopefully you find that that's welcome news, that we're coming with a really well-known and supported tool to replace our current Observe Client behavior. All right, so if there no questions on that, we'll go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing here, Josh. And if you want to pick up, we can talk about your example.
Yeah. Let me share. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So that same example with the placeholder records, so where we created placeholder records with warranty, in that same sort of discussion with a customer that wanted to do that, you know, there was also a discussion about, you know, how would I know when my warranties are coming up? You know, how do I know, you know, when maybe I want to replace the devices? You know, so obviously you can go to custom fields, edit custom fields, right? And I can make a start date, an end date. I can make warranty notes, right? So this start and end date, right? These are custom fields that I can put a date-based, it's a date and time field, right? My warranty notes is kind of a text field, so it's listed as a string because I want to put maybe some notes about the warranty, maybe a note about that I'm about to replace the device or something, just kind of a comment field, right? So I can create these and use them for my devices. I've assigned them to all my devices so that I can put values in. And if we look at my
Hey, Josh,
clients,
can I ask
yeah,
you, can I ask a question about that custom field?
yeah.
I forgot to mention it before when I was showing that import, but is there anything special about the format of that when it's a date value?
Yes, and
Like your
I'm gonna
warranty end
I'm
date?
gonna
Just
forget
what's special about it?
the name of the time zone format, but I know you remember it. But it's not just doing like 660. It's not like this example. It has to be in ISO. What's the number? In
It's
that
8601.
ISO 8601 format. So it looks a little funny. And I believe when you export data, right, when you save a view, you'll see it in that format. It's got kind of a
Correct.
Z in the middle, and
Yes.
it's very important to follow that formatting when you do it. And I suppose you could be misled a little bit when you look here and you see the grayed out text is sort of in normal date time format. So really important to use that format, or else whenever you import, it may just not show the date or not be what you expected. But if you just do it here in the console, you know, I can right click and I can edit custom field values. And, you know, if I have a lot of them, I can search here and I can say, okay, the end date for this, I'm going to set this. And here I can sort of treat it like a normal date because I'm just sort of using our UI to do it, right? And I'll say that it started today and I'll leave the notes empty, right? So it's really easy to set. In my client view, I actually have the start date appearing. Maybe that's helpful for me. But I also made a query so that I can just get the information that I want anytime, right? So this was a query I made, and maybe I'll edit it to show you how I got to this place, right? So when you make a new query, right, you search for fields you want, you add them here. And in this case, if I look for warranty, I have my end date, my notes, my start date. So I dragged end date in here. And because it's a date field, I can say within the past and within the next, right? And so I want to know in the next 1 month, what warranties are coming up on their end date, right? And over here in fields, I had dragged in the start date, the end date, my notes field. I wanted to know the manufacturer of the machine, the serial number of it, and the device name to help me. And I likely want to make sure the main component is this all devices, right? So the perspective of the data here. So this looks to me like what I would be looking for, right? So when I hit cancel, this query is going to look just like this. And I could come in here periodically and see this, but probably more helpful would be a feature that maybe not everybody knows is here. In Assistance, you can actually schedule reports. So I'll open my example. If I wanted to make a new one, I'd hit the plus, but I'll open my example. In my example, I can choose, and just let me drag that down a little. I can choose if this is a query or a license report. this is a query, right? Because I want to show one of these queries. I choose who it goes to. So in this case, it goes to me. And this is my email in case anybody needs to reach out to me specifically. I give the email a subject. I can put, you know, any kind of text in here for a message body to kind of explain what this is. And in the to field, this could go to anybody. So you might have somebody, like there was a school district I worked with where the administrators worked with the facilities folks, and the facilities folks took care of making sure machines were getting recycled or replaced. But the facilities folks didn't necessarily have access to the console, right? So I could make this an email that goes to those facility folks, right? If I give them enough information to be helpful to them, and then they could get a report out of FileWave without even having a login to FileWave, right? So that might be helpful for you. So you can put a description in there, right? And I log in as FileWave admin. I'm the owner of this. I can choose the frequency. So I probably don't want this example to come every day. I probably want it to come every month, you know, maybe on the last Friday, you know, so it comes in on the last Friday of the month. When I come in on Monday, I look at the email and handle it. As far as what would be attached to the email, it'll be a CSV file, and it'll be based on whatever query you want. So when you come into this, it'll be blank and it'll just have a selection, and you'll get this window where, you know, if I don't want it to be the warranty example, I can pick demo, and I'll pick that just so you can see. See, it changes to show you which query you're emailing. So by doing this, every Friday, on the last Friday at 12 a.m., this will go to me. And I'll hit OK. And if I was curious about what that looks like, because now I've set that up and I'm a little worried about, you know, will it go out? Will the spam filter catch it? If you come here to scheduled reports, once you've defined one, you can click send now, and it will try to send it right then and there. So you can look at your email and see if it ends up in your junk folder or not. This email is driven by what the server believes is the email server, right? So when you go here to dashboard, if your email settings is red and indicates that you haven't set it up, then that email won't go, and you'll want to define your email settings. And if memory serves, because I haven't looked at this in a little bit, I believe it is right here. So you can see, can't see my password, but you know. So I'm sending this through Gmail and using TLS, and I can pick to send a test email. So that's kind of an important step to make sure the scheduled emails go. Did that all make sense? Any questions about that?
There weren't any questions on that. Hopefully folks have used scheduled reports. They're really kind of nice, especially for keeping folks out of the admin console that you prefer not be there.
Yeah, and I suppose on the flip side, there's a whole other topic that we could go into another time, the permission system, right? So there might be people where you want to let them in, but only give them access to certain things. And we have a pretty rich permission system that could limit access as well. But I've definitely had a lot of situations where somebody just getting an emailed report, if it has enough data, could be enough, and then you don't necessarily need them to log into the console.
Anything else you wanted to show us, Josh?
Was there anything we talked about?
So there's a question that Chris just sent in. Is there a way to manage the offload or to offload unused apps settings from files?
You know, in iOS, there's a setting where, right, I think that's what they're talking about, where if you don't use an app for a while, it switches to kind of a placeholder icon and removes the app itself and just leaves the little placeholder icon for it until you launch it next. I think that's their question. But that's an iOS setting that causes that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not available yet in the MDM protocol. Try to get information from Apple if they have something, but from what I know, it's not in the documentation. I would just repeat what I said for the clear photos request, which went in the chat. For everything which is iOS management and unfortunately coming to Mac, we cannot do way more than what Apple allows us to do. So in that case, when there is really no way to do it, the best way is that we open a ticket on Apple side, feature request, and you open a ticket on the Apple side. They always need these two feature requests coming so they can measure the importance of the feature request. In FileWave, we have probably 1 or 2 devices per employee, plus the ones we have for testing. We are way smaller than you are with your 10 or thousands of devices. So your weight is way more important for Apple than we are, even if we have some agreement with them. So having you asking Apple for a new feature is really important.
Yeah, I remember back when Tony and I were customers of Apple, like more directly managing an environment, and every request would have, I forget the term Apple uses, but I'm sure everybody on here that works with Apple knows it, but there's like a customer impact number. So even though, you know, we may have had 10,000 Macs that we supported, they'll ask for that thing that you're asking for, how many of them would be impacted by this thing? And it's always really important if something affects your whole fleet to include that information, you know, to Apple to say, hey, I have 4,000 iOS devices that would be impacted by this if we could have this enhancement or if this bug could be fixed. Because Apple does consider that, and the more customers with more devices that ask for that same thing, it really does give weight. And we've seen historically a lot of features added to iOS because of many folks asking and them really understanding the full impact about the number of devices that would benefit from a enhancement.
So to segue from that topic, because it's a pretty good lead into this, Pien, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the changes for Apple for the fall release, what we're looking at and their importance to us, and maybe gauging the importance from the crowd?
Yep, we can have a, I'm not sure if maybe I can share my screen. Do you want me to share, to discuss a little bit about Product Board or an advertise about Product Board or not yet?
Oh yeah, we've discussed Product Board previously, so yeah, feel free. But I will say that until I mentioned TeamViewer in this call, we've been hiding the updates to the roadmap from the public, but we'll be posting those a little bit later today, so we'll see some of these things.
No, I cannot share my screen, so I don't have the permissions, but yeah, maybe I can talk about it, the different items which have been announced. So as usual, so WWDC is the time for, or June is the time for WWDC, and everything will be released usually mid-September for iOS, iPadOS, tvOS, and later September, late September or early October for Mac. As usual, we will try to be ready as early as possible, depending on the size of the changes and how fast we can implement the changes. And there is the support for macOS 12 Monterey that will be added definitely there, the new features for the different iOS versions. But there are a few items which have been announced by Apple, and we will definitely not be able to do all of them with this short time frame. And we probably need some input from your side. So during the previous presentation, we talked about Product Board, so our tool, the tool that we are using to share our roadmap, to share what we want to do in the future and to get feedback from your side. So I started to play with Product Board and to add the different items, which we will maybe not do for the very first version, but we still have some time to implement things. So we will need your feedback, and we will see together with Tony and Josh how we can share access to this part and how we can get your feedback. So what is not in the must have, but in the very nice to have. I discussed previously about the VPP protocol. So they call it VPP version 2.0. This one is probably my favorite because we've seen a lot of issues with the current protocol, which is unfortunately very, very, very slow. So this one, as I said, will bring hopefully a lot of scalability, way more licenses assigned at the same time, feedback when something goes wrong, feedback when you buy new licenses. So we would get a notification. You don't need to have a VPP sync done every 5 minutes. So this one should be better. Another thing which is coming, and maybe you can chime in the chat if there is if you are using it. 2 years ago, Apple introduced user enrollment. So it's their way of bringing BYOD to device management. And it's a way where end user devices, they are not managed, they are not part of your organization. They can still enroll to your organization. Apple will make sure that the private part stays private and the managed part stays managed. And there is very limited boundaries between both. Or there is a good boundaries and there is no overlap between both, sorry. We implemented support for that a couple of years ago, but I feel that it was not really used. When I try to use it and to test it, it's quite cumbersome to use. The way Apple made it available was not super straightforward, and yeah, I feel I haven't received that much features from customers, so my guess is that you are not using it that much. This year, Apple made it simpler to use. You had to provide a specific URL, customers had to, end user had to go there, enroll the device in a specific way. They announced that now there is a discovery mechanism and that the enrollment process is much smoother than before. We will have to do some changes in FileWave. We will have to document how the discovery system works and so on. So that's some work on our side. But if this is something that may be useful for organizations, that's something we can address sooner than later. So that's for BYOD and user enrollment changes. For macOS, there are some macOS Monterey, and sorry for my very French accent, I probably butchered the name. They are bringing two things. One is, by the way, not in macOS Monterey, but it's already in macOS 11.5, which is coming in the probably in 1 or 2 weeks if the beta versions are good enough for Apple. One is the replacement for firmware, password, and device lock for M1 Mac. Firmware password change is an MDM feature which works only for Intel Macs. And for M1 Mac, you had no way to manage that. They are bringing it in macOS 11.5. So there is a way you would be able to set the password, to check that you have the password, and to lock the device with a PIN code. We want to introduce that for FileWave, storing the PIN code, because the way we implemented the current device lock years ago is working, but if you mistype the PIN code or if you forget about it, then the device is bricked and it's not great there. Another thing, and for now we have only very limited information on how it works, but we really want to introduce that there, is they want to add erase all content and settings for the Mac. So the same thing as iOS. Instead of wiping completely the device and waiting long time until macOS is back and from a completely clear device, they will allow us, Apple will allow us to just wipe the device with the content and the settings, but the system will still be there. So that should allow way faster refresh if that works properly. There should be a profile to limit this. So this will be definitely in FileWave as soon as possible, but then there will be commands and there will be process to deal with this. So that's for macOS management for now. What else do we have? Software update changes. Last year with macOS Big Sur, Apple killed the old legacy way of installing software update on Mac. We were using the software update command line tool, but yeah, that's gone. Using the old offline catalog is not available anymore. We need to go through MDM. They are bringing a few updates there for software updates, both on Mac and on iOS. We should have more information provided by macOS 12 devices to know which update is available for the device. For now, we just have to rely on what the device reports and to do some guesses. Now the integration with a web service Apple provides, the software update lookup service, will be there, and that would allow us to give you better information about what is available and when on the devices. There is a feature on the MDM protocol which allows to define which version of the update we want to install. This was iOS, this is now macOS as well. So there is a way to update to the not most up-to-date version of macOS, or the update, but the second last or an intermediate version. I'm not sure if you've seen this in the presentations from Apple, but iOS, starting with iOS 15, the updates will not be pushed and mandatory for major updates, which means that you will still be able to stay with iOS 14 and you will still get minor updates, security updates, without updating to iOS 15. Today, if you are not running iOS 14, you don't get security updates unless you're running a device which cannot run iOS 14. So I think 2 days ago, there was just an update for iOS 12.4.5, if I remember correctly, which contains security fixes. Next year, when iOS 15 will be out, we can expect fixes, security fixes for iOS 14. There will be a way to define which update will be presented to the end user. Will it be iOS 15? Will it be the most recent iOS 14? Or will it be both? And this is one setting that will be managed by MDM, and this is something we can bring to FileWave. Last but not least, the new MDM protocol. This is something which was on the pipe for a couple of years, but it was a lot under development, and it has been made public this year by Apple. The MDM protocol has been created like 2010 with iOS 4. So that was a long time ago. I started with FileWave with iOS 5 and with the very, very basics MDM commands. And now 10 years later, we have something like 40 commands combined together, and a lot of information could be done with MDM. And this has one big drawback. We have to send commands one by one. You want to install 100 apps, you have to send, please install this app, okay, then install this app, okay. And you have to do that for each device. That takes a lot of time. The same for profiles. If we want to send multiple profiles, it's one by one per each device. It's slow, it adds a lot of load on the device, on the server. And yeah, not ideal when you have larger setup than what we had in 2010. Now the new protocol, which has been announced and which is being worked on by Apple, allows to have declarative management. This is how they call it. It's very similar to how the other vendors are now doing MDM management. FileWave is a cross-platform MDM solution. We've seen that with Google Chromebooks management. We've seen that with Windows MDM management. We don't send commands anymore to these devices. We send them the state we want the device to be, and then the device deals with everything. So there will be a way where FileWave will be able to define the device. Okay, you need these apps, you need these profiles, you need this configuration, and do it. So less load on the server because we send one big command with everything, and then the device deals with the rest. It brings, in addition, on-device conditions. So for now, it's very, very limited, but it sounds like in the future, it will be much extended with way more capabilities. You will be able to define on the device that this policy should be applied depending on context. The example they gave was if you're running this version or this version of iOS, but I hope that they will expand it with way more capabilities. Maybe we don't know, but maybe location. If you are in this area, you will have these settings. You are outside this area, you will have these settings. rules like if you are on this Wi-Fi or not of this Wi-Fi. Everything you can do today with FileWave, with custom fields or smart groups could be done directly on the device in the future. So obviously that's a lot of changes for FileWave because we have to reinvent how we discuss with the devices. There will probably not be a one-to-one parity between the existing profiles and the new declarative management. So we'll have to figure out how it works, especially that we try to be quite good at backward compatibility with FileWave. Don't tell this to anyone, but you can still manage iOS 6 devices with FileWave. Please don't do that. Go at least to iOS 9 and iOS 12 minimum, please. But yeah, it's still doable. We still have code to manage iOS 6 devices. Now this works only with iOS 15 and forward. So we'll have to see how we will allow you to manage both iOS 15 devices with these brand new features and the old one without duplicating your work. So kind of challenging for us, but yeah, life would be boring without that. So that's the 5 key items. We are not 100% sure about the priority, about the importance for you as a FileWave customer and about organizations using Apple iOS devices. So we will open this product board as soon as we have all information there. And yeah, time for you to work and give us your comments and tell us what's important for you.
Yeah, so we'll publish those things as PM was mentioning on product board, so you can start telling us, you know, whether those things are important to you. Nobody really commented too much on that, but I suspect that the BYOD user part's probably not as important as some of the other parts. Certainly the Mac OS wipe, you know, restore without wiping the device is really a good operational change. And I know you said that we've got iOS 6 support, but I mean, it's just like 3 lines of code, right? It's not, it can't be too much. You turn it upside down and shake it, right? And to erase it like an Etch-a-Sketch.
It's just to tell that some features are available starting from iOS 6, but yeah.
Very. Super. Well, thanks for the update, Pian. And as you mentioned, we'll update that and product board, and you'll see that linked to when you create support tickets. And of course, it's in a knowledge base there as well. So you'll be able to get to that directly from there. We'll probably have that posted, I would suspect, a little later this week for you to be able to start giving us feedback. All right, there hasn't been much activity. The chat has slowed down a little bit.
There was a note Emma sent saying that folks were asking about multi-conflict resolution, because that's new in 14.5.
Oh, it is. It is.
And,
so let me show that real quick. We'll kind of wrap up with that one. Let me share my screen again. And we'll hop back in. So yes, so in 14.5, you can hear me okay, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so in 14.5, this isn't a server where I've got a whole bunch of conflicts, but I think I do have one. So I know this is a big one. And this is only in the native admin. But if we go in and take a look in desktop clients, and I bring that window over, of course you can have conflicts. I've just got one that I've kind of let sit here so that I've got an example to work with. But you'll notice a couple of changes. There's the option to solve conflicts. And when we do that, we get this window that allows us to solve the conflicts. You're all used to this view, although there is a new button here for showing details. It allows us to see the specific details of what the new client looks like compared to the existing client. What you can't see, because I've only got the one in here, is that, where did I just close that window? This allows multi-select. So I can sort by status, for instance, although I only have one record, but I can shift click in here, and option click to select individual devices or multiple devices to be able to solve conflicts all at once. So that's one way of doing the mass conflict resolution where you're doing it manually. There's another option as well. If you know that, for instance, maybe you're doing a lot of Windows imaging and you know that with the device names and the way they come in, they're always going to conflict. And you know maybe need to do it temporarily while you're imaging devices, you can also go ahead and choose if you're automatically adding clients to say this group is mine is now configured. There's a new option in here for automatically resolving those conflicts, and then you pick which option you want. In most cases, what we find is that most of our customers use the replace the old clients with the new so that the new device that comes in will pick up the data from the old one. Right, so that will be in there. It gives you a warning that conflict resolution kind of bypasses the whole client certificate security element. So that is something to keep in mind, because if that is protecting you, the certificate that's saying, hey, this device is who it says it is, turning this on will bypass that. So it's something you want to think about before you turn it on. But you can just turn this on temporarily while you're doing imaging work, for instance, and then maybe turn it back off. That's a possibility. I do want to mention that these are both now driven by a new preference that you'll see in the preference pane. So if we go into preferences and go to, where is the, oh, sorry, I do that every time. It's not in preferences, it's in manage administrators. There's a new permission, right? So if we look at, say, my account here and look at permissions, there's a new checkbox here for manage automatic enrollment. Right? This was merged previously in the modify clients and groups, that ability to set the folder for enrolling new clients, but now it's its own preference. So this checkbox will allow an admin to turn on automatic enrollment and to allow bypassing or automatically resolving those conflicts. So if you had the rights to manage that before, you still will. This will automatically be checked for you. But as you create new accounts, that will be unchecked and you'll need to add it. But hopefully that's a very welcome change, because we know that the conflict resolution thing has been very problematic for folks. All right, has anything else come up? Any questions on that, Josh, or any other questions in general?
I don't think anything unanswered, unless I missed anything, Bao or Emma.
Okay. Well, we're a couple of minutes early, but we thank you all for joining us. As always, we really do enjoy doing these sessions. We're not sure quite when the next one will be. Everybody's, of course, very busy through the summers. But we look forward to talking to you again, and thank you for joining us all. And we'll talk to you again next time. All right, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Take care.